Well, and on this July 3rd, we start with a Fox News alert. More than 24 House Republicans are reportedly preparing to write a letter to President Biden to end his re-election effort if he continues to be shaky.
So this comes as a pair of congressional Democrats publicly declare they have no confidence in Biden's ability to win and serve another term.
Doug Lazater is live in Washington with all the details here. Hi, Doug.
Good morning, everyone. The president may be in danger now of a widespread revolt among Democrats. Here's what Reuters is now reporting. There are 25 Democratic members of the House of Representatives preparing to call for Biden to step aside if he seems shaky in coming days, according to one House Democratic aide. There is reportedly a staff meeting at the White House as something of a morale booster. And later, the president today will meet with a group of Democratic governors, hoping to convince them that he is capable of serving as president and defeating former President Donald Trump in November. At the same time, there are some cracks now emerging in that wall of support that we have seen from elected Democrats after the president's disastrous debate performance last week. Texas Congressman Lloyd Doggett among those now openly talking about the party finding another candidate.
This needed to be a decision that was made much earlier in the process, but I remain hopeful that despite all the input from his own staff and perhaps from some family members, that he'll look at these numbers and realize that this is a hill just too high for him to climb and call on someone else.
I actually don't see a path now for President Biden to stay in this race in the long term. I believe that there are stronger options out there for Democrats. We have a stable of folks that I think could do a better job. I believe that another Democrat would have a better shot at beating Trump.
All right, now let's talk about former President Obama. Officially, publicly, he is still in Biden's corner, but privately, he's concerned. According to the Washington Post, which writes this, Obama has long harbored worries about his party defeating Donald Trump in November, repeatedly warning Biden in recent months about how challenging it will be to win re-election. And the White House just made, for this administration, some extraordinary announcements. The president is going to sit down for a one-on-one interview later this week, and pretty soon he's going to actually have a press conference. These are things that this president generally doesn't do, so they are clearly trying to convince Democrats to circle the wagons here. Back to you guys.
And we know that Gavin Newsom, your governor out in Los Angeles, is going to be heading to the White House, and Governor as well as the vice president. So we'll see if they rally around him. Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
So we'll see, because people are talking about possible replacements, and then there's the practical side of it. There's a guy with over 1,000 delegates. His name is Joe Biden.
That's right.
And the vice president of the United States, even though she looks better in the head-to-head poll, in this poll with CNN, not in any others, she was trailing by about 6 or 7 points. And who would want to jump in this bifurcated campaign? This is your career, too. And if you're in your 40s and you feel as though you're the next generation, why am I going to go pick up the tatters of a campaign and take on a buzzsaw like President Trump, who has never been stronger?
So there's some disagreement on the couch this morning about this. Me and Steve have been talking about it.
In the rehearsal.
In the rehearsal, we talked a little bit about it.
Yeah, we came in about 3. Right. Heavy pancake makeup on.
Yeah.
You mean 3 minutes before?
That's right, 3 minutes
top
before.
of the hour.
So
3 seconds.
There's a few reasons why I disagree with Steve. Steve thinks he's going to be replaced.
Biden will not be the nominee ultimately.
And I think the reason why that's not going to happen, we always look at the Democrat and their politics and how they operate as if they function like Republicans. They don't. Their party leadership has way more control. I don't believe the 25 report. And if it is true that 25 Dems are going out there and going to say for him, that means Nancy Pelosi has flipped, and that means Hakeem Jeffries has flipped. The second thing is, if he does get removed, there is no ifs, ands, and buts about it. They have to select Kamala Harris. They have to. And if they don't select Kamala Harris, they risk fracturing the whole party. For those reasons, I think Joe is here to stay.
Okay, here's what it comes down to. Did you watch Thursday night? That guy was terrible. He stunk. Yesterday, everybody continued to spin. Well, KJP did. He had one bad night. It's one bad night, but he's got these really good policies. Ultimately, what all these Democrats are starting to do, and these 25 Democrats who Reuters is talking about are those frontline Democrats in purple districts, and their political future is in peril. So rather than
back a guy who they feel is going to lose. They're saying, you know what, we're going to write a letter and say, maybe you should take yourself out. Ultimately, what they're trying to do is they're trying to convince him to bow out. Because if there's a fight, it's going to be too complicated.
Yeah.
But ultimately, here's what it comes down to. On one of the Sunday shows, Joe Manchin was supposed to be on one of the Sunday shows, and he was going to come out and say, I know I've worked with Joe Biden for decades. But Joe Biden has got to step aside and let somebody else take over. He got the full court press by Chuck Schumer and other top Democrats, and they said, you cannot be you can't do this to Joe. You've been a friend too long. Tammy Baldwin, who is the senator in Wisconsin, Joe Biden is going to her hometown on Friday. Suddenly, she's not going to be there because of his scheduling.
Well, listen, I think that it's just amazingly 4 months before the election, it's too early to tell. And this report of 25 Democrats, it really hinges on the schedule that was released by Karine Jean-Pierre yesterday, where she says he's going to do the interview on ABC. We're going to have a press conference for NATO next week in Washington, D.C. If he has big mistakes during those two public events, I don't even think it would be up to Joe Biden and Jill Biden anymore. If there is a tidal wave of Democrats that say, you got to go, they are representing their constituents, the American people, and that will be the determining factor. Incredibly, Joe Biden was at a campaign event in McLean, Virginia yesterday, and he made an admission that will make things even worse for him today. Here's the quote. He said, I decided to travel around the world a couple of times shortly before the debate, and then I almost fell asleep on stage. What he's talking about is going to France for the D-Day anniversary, and also Italy for the G7 summit.
Back and forth.
The last time he was in Europe, that trip that he was talking about, was 13 days before the debate. He had 2 weeks to recover.
So
he's saying he fell asleep on
stage.
stage.
There's a couple of things happening. Number one, he's still not telling the truth. He said he almost fell asleep on stage, which is unbelievable, unless you're on some type of cold medicine that should be NyQuil. For you to fall asleep. Number two, it also came out the revelation that when he was doing his rehearsing, he didn't start before 11 and had to take a nap in the afternoon. And that is after his trip, which he chose to go back and forth on, to go to a Juneteenth event, go back and forth, not go to the Ukraine peace summit, but go back to a glitzy fundraiser. What I find offensive is that story in the New York Times where they detail all of his mistakes and the people behind the scenes saying that Joe zones out. He goes catatonic or rigor mortis at a fundraiser. Then they say overseas European ambassadors and officials saying that he seemed out of it, that the president of Italy knew that he was. So now they're telling us, wait a second, did you have this ready to go? You just didn't hit print? Now you want to pretend that you're a reporter? Does this pattern sound familiar? The Russia hoax. They told us this thing was worse and president's in business with Vladimir Putin. He's here to throw the country to Russia. Then it turns out not to be true. They move on, they have their trophies, and they go. Now they're finding out all these things that we've been reporting on. And Jackie Heinrich and your son asking these questions, but isolated. And I was like, look at these crazy people asking these questions. Now they're asking the same question. They don't remember that we know that they sat on their hands.
So Jackie goes within the briefing, and she gives them the opportunity. By the way, I think it's totally cowardly to send the press secretary out there. There's nothing that she would have been able to say to defend.
And she never sat with him before going out.
And you know what, Lawrence, we just ran a soundbite with one of the reporters there who had a good point. If the president wants to prove he's okay,
he could just come
down here right now and talk to us. And it's like, can't really do that.
But Steve, the real point was Jackie gave them the opportunity to take back some of the comments. You came at us.
Cheap fakes.
You came at her. You said it was cheap fakes. You said it was misinformation. That, as she said, there was a campaign to attack the president. And now we know all of that stuff was true.
Well, here's the thing. So now Joe Biden at this fundraiser yesterday in Virginia said, I fell asleep because I went back and forth. Why did he go back and forth? The staff said, don't fly back to the United States.
He should be able to do all of it. He's the president of the United States.
But his son Hunter was on trial about that time, so maybe that's why
he didn't go to the trial.
No, I know he didn't, but his wife did. So here's the thing.
On our dollar.
Absolutely. So the president's team says he has a cold. He has a cold. And then yesterday he goes, I was tired.
Yeah.
Which is it?
Well,
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.